Okay, so for our final little shindig in here is our Unique Perspectives panel on Dragon Furnace Potential. Sort of a formal, quasi-formal panel discussion. So I'd like to invite up Freddie Blosh, Devin Cole, Jesse Durham, Grant Gramezzi, Georgianne Greth, and Devin Murphy. If y'all wouldn't mind coming up.
Calm down.
I'd like to say in advance, I'm extremely grateful for all of you being game for this.
We had a choice.
Yeah, I think we're going to go. Without the microphones,
Okay.
just because it'll get a little awkward with that. So I'm going to grab a chair and just kind of go up. Yeah, because I didn't give anybody anything to prepare for, so they're going into this blind.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Looks like
So what I'm thinking about this going down is I've got a couple of prompts, and then I'm hoping that sort of an organic discussion comes out of it. And if there's any questions that come up from anybody, shout them out, because I'm really curious. This is about everybody here works with Small Shop, one of our studios, and everybody here comes from a very different perspective on it. So if you wouldn't mind just going in order, name, description of kind of what you do in glass, and we'll go from there.
I'm Devin Cole. I came here about 6 years ago and worked under Chuck Wells and Phil Vinson, and was able to position myself to own a little dragon furnace. And I started my own business called Hotglass Academy. I go around and I perform glassblowing in different communities.
My name is Freddie Blosh. I discovered mobile glassblowing at the last Corning conference and kind of saw it as like, oh, that'd be awesome because you finally get a chance to run your own shop as like just getting out of college, as opposed to having to go intern or go work for somebody that's been doing it for years and years and years. It's giving me this opportunity to be your own boss as soon as you're done with school. And now we're running a small shop and we do live demonstrations around our city. Glassblowing is fairly new to my town, is Mobile, Alabama. So mobile glassblowing in Mobile, Alabama is really fun to explain. No, we're not here. It's actually up in Georgia. But it's amazing and it's doing so much for our community.
My name is Grant Gramezzi. I've been blowing glass for about 13 years, focused primarily in sculpting. I ran into Chuck at the San Jose Gas Conference and was just immediately blown away with the potential of a dragon. And we just kind of kept in touch, and I got my dragon in October recently, and it's just been a game changer for me, where I don't have to rent time at a studio, which I did for the last decade, and be able to make more elaborate sculptures, more detailed sculptures, and also the opportunity to be able to teach and do private lessons and not have to tiptoe around someone else's shop. So it's just it's been amazing, and I just can't wait to see what's next with it.
My name is Devin Murphy. I run the glassblowing studio in Pensacola, Florida. We're the First City Arts Center. And we have a full, more traditional shop where we have a furnace and glory holes and annealers. And then we got a grant from this organization called Sunday's Child to get a dragon, and we take that dragon out to Title I schools. So a big part of our mission is education and outreach. So we get about 1,000 kids a year to come to us, but by bringing our shop to them, way more kids get to see glassblowing for the first time. And then we also get to do some like really silly things where we'll light up our mobile glass unit, fire it up for a couple hours, turn it off, drive it 2 miles, perform in front of 1,000 people for gallery night, drive it back to the shop and pack it away, which like the first time we did that I was like, we'll not mention that this is 2,000 degrees and I'm driving it.
My name is Georgianne Greth. I've been a glassblower for 30, maybe 32 years. We stopped counting. It's been my solo career. I've been a professor, I've been a studio artist, I've been an assistant, obviously. What else? I've lost my train of thought here. Ran 800-pound furnace, run 350-pound furnaces twice, public access shops. So unless you came into my studio, I never got to meet anybody. All my friends are my students. So I thought this would be a good idea for me to go out and see the world around me, and it's been working. I've been to several places, maybe 27 shows in about a year and a half. And now people are starting to call me. So that's great.
So one of the things that I'm really interested in this is, like, this is a wide variety of uses for small shops. And I think you've all already touched on my next little question was, what are the advantages of it? I think in your introduction, you just kind of volunteered that. Anyway, so I think it's a really interesting opportunity when you get a bunch of glassblowers together to talk about the disadvantages. Like, what are the problems? What are the issues? Like, what are the, I know some, Devin and I are pretty close, Cole. So sometimes there's some issues that come up, say with the public, like, or as a glass blower, or as a glass artist, or just like trying to do the hustle, right?
It's a whole different game. Our first event, we went to Columbus, Georgia.
Oh God, that was.
So, our first event, it's like on, what is it, Columbus on the River or something. It's an art fair one day. We show up with a furnace, strap it to a sculpture, first strap the propane to a...
There was a sculpture that looked just like, that was a sculpture of like a mine, like an underwater mine from like World War II.
Yeah,
and it had a little music box on it that would sing like a lullaby.
But day went great, you know, it kind of rained a little bit, but people really enjoyed it. You know, you were out in the public, loved it. Get ready to go home and turn off the furnace. And, you know, some of the issues that I quickly found out about was just like transportation, improvement, like, we actually ended up, you know, getting stuck, our trailer stuck under the roof of a hotel. So
you couldn't go back, you had to go forward.
Yeah, so we had to like deflate the tires and then like re-inflate them. But so
I had to stand on the front of the trailer to get it to tilt going in, then I have to run to the back of the trailer, stand on that to tilt it back so it would go up, finish going forward.
So it really does have a whole new set of circumstances that you have to work under. And that was my first introduction to mobile glassblowing. So you get rid of all, or you get the failures, you know, done quickly ahead of time, and hopefully it's just smooth sailing after that.
As far as like taking it on the road,
Yeah, any other pros or cons on that whole scene, you know?
the first time that I brought my furnace out, it was actually like a year today. There was a local music and arts festival, and we just kind of threw it together, our demonstration, the week of. It was, I called the local arts council. I was like, hey, I really want to do some live glassblowing demonstrations downtown. Is that at all possible? And they're like, yeah, sure. We don't really know what goes into this, but if you could have it going by noon, that'd be great. It's like, all right, so I'll show up at like 7 in the morning and be out there with no one else around, just lighting this thing up. And so then as soon as it's lit, all these people just come out of nowhere. What are you doing? Are you cooking pizza? Is this a moonshine distillery? Like, what's happening? Yeah, it's like, no, it's glass blowing. So stick around, like, come back later. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. And so we do the demonstration. We're playing with fire. People are loving it. And we end about 6 o'clock. It's like, okay, so let's wait for the furnace to not be red hot when we load it up into the trailer. So we didn't realize that once you have the furnace in the trailer, that the inside of the trailer becomes a sauna and will melt anything that's plastic. So we get home and the vent up on top of the trailer is dripping down. Like, okay, maybe we don't need to do that. So now it's our policy, load everything up first and then put the furnace in the trailer and just go. Don't stop moving. If you see a red light, slowly creep up so that air is moving through, but do not stop. Always move when the furnace is in the trailer. So that was my first experience.
My first show was at the Alamance Arts, and it was quite an honor because I got to blow while Dale Chihuli's exhibit was up. So I hauled in, and I'm kind of proud, and I get out of the truck, and anybody have a pair of bolt cutters? I forgot the keys for the locks on the back. I haven't done that since.
So Pensacola Gallery Night, it sounds like it's this art event, but mostly they let folks drink on the street. So the first half is people watching glassblowing, people talking about art, people looking at things. The second half is 15 to 2,000 people who've had way too much to drink being like this close to you blowing glass. They're like, can I touch it? I'm like, no, you can't touch it. Like, can I drink out of it now? I'm like, so that's always a little bit of a trip. And then when we set up, we usually try to be done by a reasonable hour, and the drinking continues for another little bit. So we have to move. You'll see our rig. Our rig is a little oversized. We have to move it through, those 1,000 drunk people, and you have to like convince a police officer that like, oh yeah, can I just go? And they're like, no, you need to stay. So we almost had a volunteer get arrested, and that's, it's good now that we've figured it out and sort of put in systems where you have to just call the police ahead of time, explain what you're going to do, and then how you're going to leave.
Well, we got that one sorted out on our festival.
Oh, good.
Yeah. That's great. So I'm thinking about the hustle and the public perception and like sales and selling yourself and how that goes. I mean, I know even like insurance, right? Like that's a thing. And I don't know how, and I've heard a lot of different stories about how those different things go. And I guess what I'm wondering about is there a mechanism that can help propel this forward? I mean, you guys are all like breaking ground with this scene, and it's like this wasn't really a thing very often until a couple of years ago. Now there's like 80 of these things out in the United States, and it's becoming more and more prolific. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like more out in the public sphere. Do you find, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, what can be done to like help you get the price that you need, to help you make get the gigs? Is there any thoughts on that? It's like, I think about an association from time to time, like that would be sort of like the Automobile Association. But like, it's kind of an awkward question, and it may not be something that you've thought about before, but it's that, like, do you find, like, Grant, you have more of a gallery presence, and that's sort of how you've developed yourself as an artist. And then you got this home shop, and you're not really planning on taking it out on the road, right?
Oh, well, I'd like to in the future, so it's actually great to hear these horror stories. I learned from them. But yeah, I've yet to actually take mine off premise, so it's like, it's just been a game changer for me, just like creative freedom again. It's like as a glass artist, being able to practice was something I could never really afford to do, and now I can take a day and just be in the studio and not have to make anything. I can fail over and over and over and not worry about putting something away that needs to sell for hundreds of dollars.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely want to take it out in the future and be able to do more visiting artist gigs, because I do a lot of traveling and I do a lot of teaching, and I think that's one thing that I could use my Dragon for. I just got to get that trailer and get on the road. But yeah, insurance-wise, I've always thought about that as well, like what you guys do or not do, or with all that.
Yeah, I mean, we have an agent here that we refer people to, but he can only cover in certain areas. I think he's helped out a few of our clients. But I'm just, are there other things like that? Like, I've talked about having or thought about, I don't even know how to make that happen, like a gig finder or something. Like, people call me and ask if there's a glass blower in such and such an area, then I'll always refer to the different areas and hook people up with gigs as we can. But I'm just wondering if, like, for you guys that are like doing gigs, are you finding is it picking up, or is it like,
It's picking up now.
How is it out there?
At first, there was no reference, like you're saying, but I thought it was going to be great, and I was like, wow, I thought it was going to be gangbusters and very well received, and I wanted to do arboretums and museums and things like that. Well, I ended up begging to do a lot of shows. Some of them were farm shows, whatever. I did, whatever show just to get myself out there and be seen. And sometimes I didn't want to go because I knew it was going to cost me money. But I just had to keep putting myself out there. But I would call and tell them what I wanted to do, like the Arboretum, J.C. Ralston. And they were like, excuse me, you want to do what? You want to burn our yard down? Like, they had no reference of what I was doing. So finally I got cocky. And it was probably out of desperado. So I started to tell people, well, you better catch me while you can, because I'm soon going to be very popular. And they called me back the next day. We'd like to meet with you. We found a place that we could put you.
That's interesting. Yeah. What about you guys?
Well, for me, when I first started out, what I did was I entered into a couple of different fairs that were going on, small ones in the area. And I found what happened was, because I was up in the Northwest in Washington State, where there's about a gazillion glass blowers, and it seemed like all the bigger fairs and events were taken care of with somebody there with a studio or some sort of configuration, or there were a lot of glass blowers presenting glass there that they weren't really interested in having somebody there with a studio. I found that other small events would call me. The word got around that, there's this guy that's got a mobile studio. And so I found myself going that route. There's a little word of mouth going on that I would get a call or two. And, the few I did was really, I just say, would you pay for my propane? And they'd say, yeah. So off I went. And usually it was pretty good success, and I'd get a lot of referrals and, sell some artwork. And then the other good thing that came is I got to know a lot of other glass blowers, because they would come around sometimes and talk to you and, just show up at the fair for whatever reason. So there's a little bit of networking going on there too.
So you brought up something interesting, like you went to the fair and you did for propane. Speaking to the financials, typically when I book an event, I do a studio rate and then I do a glass blower rate. So just keeping that like itemized sometimes can really help, and also just like making clear parameters on what you need, showing up 12 hours ahead of time, showing up 24 hours ahead of time, leaving at the right time, and just being very clear and direct about all those decisions that have to happen. So
that's a good thing you brought that up, because one time I went to a fair and I told them what I needed electrically, and they didn't have enough, so I couldn't run my annealer. So I was doing like we do sometimes. I just was throwing stuff in the annealer.
Right.
Shards, right? God forbid, don't put it in the bucket.
And people would ask me, can I come and buy that tomorrow? And I'm like,
I'll send it to you in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the thing where it's like, well, I have to go home with it, and sometimes things don't survive very well in the annealer on the ride home. I'll let you know.
That's pretty clever.
You have a question?
But actually, can I address this from the other side?
Certainly.
I sat on the steering committee for the Columbus, Ohio Arts Festival for 5 years. Okay, so let me address it from the committee's side of things. Especially with modern technology, let me tell you something that would help. You all have portable displays now. Make a video and put it on a DVD. Okay, and make a packet, so that you say, I need to arrive 12 hours before or 24 hours before. I need this amount of space. I need this amount of electricity. If you want the the festival to pay for your gas and all, put that in, or say, I expect, this amount of reduction in space fee or, whatever. And you might want to set up 2 packets. Am I paying, is you as the artist, or, is the artist paying for the booth? Fine. This is what I need. Is the committee inviting you to come to display? This is what I'm going to charge you. Okay? So if you have that in a very clear packet that you can send to them, again with a DVD that shows, a little demonstration as to what you're doing, you'll get a much better reception that way.
Devin's very good at that.
So, can I add something real quick? I'm just curious. Are you referring to like the actual proposal as the you're doing like a video proposal in addition to like a written document? So you're like, hey, this is going to take me. I need this. I need that.
Yeah. What I was thinking about as far as your DVD goes, though, is just a short video of your demonstration, of a demonstration.
Gotcha, like a highlight.
So, yeah, a highlight. So, if they say, well, what is it that you do?
Here it is.
Here it is. This is what we're going to do. This is my setup.
Yeah.
And make a piece, so that they can see what the demonstration's like.
Robin.
A couple pieces too, coming from my perspective as an administrator, someone who really appreciates documentation. Like Devin was saying, the paperwork is so important. If that's not your forte, which is the case for a lot of us as artists, we're creative mind and the really organized mind don't always line up. Find somebody who can help you to get all of that stuff in place so that you have, sample agreements, sample contracts, things that you're ready to send so that you look organized and, you have all your terms laid out. And that's something that I think that Mobile Glass can help with in some ways is like, we could think about offering sample packets for people,
Where do I sign?
Make sure that, you have the specs on your equipment as far as how much electricity you need, and those sorts of requirements that you may not know just having a furnace, how many amps does it pull, to
Right.
communicate that to a festival coordinator or something like that. So maybe that's a way that Mobile Glass can, you asked about the mechanisms for helping with this sort of thing. Those could be some ideas.
You said the paperwork that it's like we should holler at LegalZoom and say, okay, you need a new category on your business documents that has to do with.
Actually, the Glass Art Society offers a lot of information, and we're offering more and more about to help people. So we have people in our community that are like really good at this stuff, just naturally, and we don't all need to be experts at everything, and we can communicate and collaborate, which is the whole bottom line of everything we're talking about here. So, but I definitely appreciate hearing from the administrative side. I get that from putting together the conference every year. That's like all I do all year. It's like help put together the details. But also, I'd be really interested to hear more from you guys about your needs for insurance, because that's also something that we're investigating through the Glass Art Society as a membership benefit. Other arts organizations, especially in Europe, have just like a basic, they get like a general insurance contract. It's not, of course, going to cover it if you burn down the town that you want to go visit, as people. But even just as artists, you can know that you've got a big amount of a decent policy to be able to bring some work as an artist to another place and be cool, and not have to have an independent policy. And that's something that we can do as a group and leverage all the people that we have as a part of the organization into that financial discussion that y'all don't have to be a part of, but you reap the benefits of. And that's what we're trying to do more and more with GAS, is assess what people need as artists and businesses or equipment manufacturers or whatever, and help provide those things, or at least connect the dots between the other people that we know that do really well at this stuff. So there's a lot of professional information available on the website, and we're about to start putting on webinars and things too, just on really basic elements of professionalism and communication. So
That's awesome. I have an interesting story with that. The way we got our insurance policy the first time was it's an addition on our liability policy. we had to have a conversation. You tell them a glass furnace, don't ever use the word furnace, because it's like all of a sudden it's this like elevated thing that's going to burn everything down and destroy its destruction. So we talked about it in terms of BTUs, and we also talked about it in terms of food trucks, right? It's just like they get insurance. So that was the kind of conversation we had to have to just even get anywhere with a holder. And once they got it, it was like, oh, duh, okay, it's no big deal.
Yeah,
right?
because they're the ins and outs, because they're the insurance
Yeah.
people, they know what those red flags are going to be.
It's really interesting kind of sometimes with the language that you use, you know?
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to speak to that for a moment. I have a policy under a business. It's a business policy for it ensures my product in transit, ensures my product at a studio, ensures it wherever it's sitting at any time. If it gets destroyed, I can place a claim on it if I choose. It also insures me for liability for damage to any place that I am with my furnace. And they also treat my furnace as if it were part of my home liability insurance. So they link it, the insurance company links it to my home insurance for the purpose of protecting the furnace. But the product and the locations that I go to are protected under a separate liability policy.
And that's huge for whenever you go out. A lot of people are going to ask you, oh, do you have insurance? Because, as you mentioned, when you say I'm bringing the glass blowing furnace, people are freaking out because they're imagining this huge fire-breathing dragon. But when you start showing them, like, oh, I can touch the bottom of this part because it's only like 140 degrees, and I've set it up next to buildings, and people are just surprised that it's not setting the building on fire because it's so well contained that once you have, yes, I'm insured, and yes, it's totally safe, then everyone starts coming to you like, okay, well, we need you to demonstrate here, and can you do this? Can you put this on grass for us at this particular location? Like, you will do this everywhere once you tell them, yes, I'm insured, nothing's going to happen to you, it's very safe. So you definitely got to have insurance.
Maybe testimonials help with that too. Once you start getting testimonials from event hosts who have hosted you successfully and had an amazing experience. Collect a few of those for your websites, right?
Yeah, and part of what we're trying to do with this one is we've got some really good video footage being done that's going to be available for everybody to use, and hopefully we're going to try and get this a little more out there after this with this event that we're doing this year, just so it can help dispel that. You go, hey, well, check out this YouTube channel, check out this video. This is what we're talking about. So I'm hoping that we have a couple of good resources for that.
There's a question over here.
Oh, I just was gonna say that something that you guys could all do that would probably help ground all these efforts is connecting it back historically too, because where I went to school for undergrad, Southern Illinois University, which is a pretty small school that a lot of people don't know about. Bill Boyson had a mobile unit that was the first glass to go to Australia at the same time as Marcus. So there's been a history of this stuff, and there's also other innovative ideas that people have done. Part of what they would do besides employing students to go around to different county fairs and do glass was also have mobile art shows where they had ready-made containers that were all set up with art in it, and they would ship it to community colleges and things like that where they were going to come in a month. So the glass show was up and people in the community are kind of educating themselves about it, or it's just another way that you can sell work. But there's all kinds of history too within our glass community of people traveling to spread the glass gospel, as Fritz calls it, and there's probably a lot of ways you can tap into some of the older school people about innovative ideas for connecting with other communities as well.
With insurance, the conversation made me nervous at first because I didn't have any problem picking up insurance. So I was like, well, so mine's through State Farm. It's for $250,000, which I don't find to be a lot of money, which makes me nervous. So sometimes when I go on site, I have to get a certificate of occupancy. So I call State Farm, and Tracy sends it to me by email, so it's on my phone if anybody should happen to come up during the show that I could show them. But like I said, I don't think $250,000 is a lot of money if I'm at a museum or arboretum or I'm at a festival. So I asked her if I could ever ante it up to be 500, or $1 million. And she said yes, I could do that if I was ever at a festival that I felt like I needed to do that. The one thing that gets me nervous in a show sometimes is some idiot just decides to drive down the street and gun for my propane tanks and blow everybody up. That would kind of make me nervous because the way the world is sometimes, people can be a little sick. So I was nervous about that in a show in Raleigh, and they told me, don't worry about it, you're getting your own police officer. And sure enough, he was there the whole time.
I used to travel and do carved candles, and I had a candle shop in Hillsborough at one point, and I had a portable unit that was heated up, not near as hot as of course, a furnace. I had to have at a minimum of $1 million, and some places $5 million.
Yeah, we run into 2 as kind of
So
the average.
I would be leery with a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what it took for us to get to start doing events downtown is I met with the chief of the fire department, and I had the furnace on, and I was like, here, put your hand on it, and then I turned it off. I showed her the size of the burner head, and I was like, okay, think about a grill that has a burner that's this big. It's like, that's not insulated. And she was like, oh, okay. And she says, as long as you have it roped off, we were fine. But until I could make those tangible comparisons, it was sort of like,
Yeah, right, and you gotta, I found that Chuck is really good about that. I won't get into details about some of your stories. But it's those very specific language on how you're talking to people, and it's not necessarily fogging, but it's more of like comparing it to a household object. Like the wattage of the annealer is less than a curling iron, and that's the truth. And you're probably more likely to get hurt with the curling iron than you are with the annealer. But yeah, that's interesting to hear you say that, because it sure makes a lot of difference. And like I said, like using the word furnace, I almost wish we called them. You called it your glass warmer one time, or
Oh, yeah.
or warmer, yeah. And what a difference! I mean, it was just like it's my glass warmer, and that's what it does. Or glass melter is another one that I've heard.
Or
appliance.
appliance. Appliance instead of furnace, we used to say appliance.
On some paperwork, yes. Yeah, and it's interesting what you're talking about with that propane thing. We ran into that with Crystallicus furnace in Germany because of the tragedy a couple of years ago at their Christmas market. No one could have anything bigger than an 11-kilogram tank, which is a barbecue tank. That was the biggest tank you can have out there. So they have to switch out like every hour because of, it freezes up a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. That was kind of some of it fun, some of it a little dry. But that's what I really want to take advantage. I mean, I feel like sometimes at events where glassblowers gather together, we talk about technique and we talk about like the fancy shiny stuff, right? And these are more the kind of conversations I like to see happen. It's like, so what are you doing with, like, how did you deal with your insurance thing? How do you deal with your contracts? How do you deal with this like dry business stuff? Because we're all we don't want to talk about it. We're kind of all in our own little thing, and we talk more about like the glory of, making the thing. So like, how do you bring that bit? Well, how did you pay for the propane to bring that bit? So I'm hoping that this is, I'm going to kind of close it up and let anybody say what they want to say, but we're just about done with time. But I hope that this kind of sparks a different kind of conversation that can continue to happen. And I'm real excited to hear about what gas could possibly offer in that association, that mindset, because I think it is a big missing link that's out there, right? Because we don't talk about this stuff. I've never gone to a discussion at the gas conference where we talked about like.
And that's what we're trying to move as an organization is really helping people with what they need, but we don't know if you don't tell us, and, the squeaky wheels get the grease, you know, so, but that's something that, you know, we've been talking about in membership, because Matt Duran, who co-chairs that committee with me, is in London, and they have the Craft Council there, which has like 400,000 people that are members or something insane, and they all have insurance through the organization, and it's a great deal, because why wouldn't you, whatever your membership dues are for the year, that provide all these other resources, why wouldn't you do that? Like, why wouldn't you, like, pay $8 to be a member and then also get all the liability insurance you need for, like, the entire calendar year as a bonus? And that's what we try to do with, like, our shipping partnerships and things like that, too. But we definitely, you know, need to, like, that's why these events are important, so that we can hear and respond to the changing technology needs of
I think health
what's
insurance
going on.
is a big one too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Potter's Council started their health insurance program that was reasonable. I don't know how it's turned now. I haven't kept up with it. But I mean, everybody that works for themselves, especially in today's economy, struggles with the insurance issue, the health insurance issue.
And coming together as a collective is the way to battle.
That's the cheapest way
It's like
to
the only way.
Yeah.
get them to write a decent policy that will actually cover and not have a $5,000 deductible that you can never pay or afford to get sick.
Hey Phil, I just wanted to mention one thing. We were just backtrack a little bit back to our first experience using our furnace. You were there whenever we turned on the furnace for the first time. He was at our house for 2 or 3 days. Well, when you left and we turned the furnace off, we were like, okay, what do we do with it? Because you're in a neighborhood. You know, you're 20 feet from your neighbor's house. Your driveway is 50 feet long. And then we're like, okay, what do we do with this thing? So we put it in the garage and closed the door about halfway. And relating to, I think it was your story, went back out there, you know, went in the house, did some things, went back out there, and it was about 400 degrees in our garage. So we opened the door, and we took it around to the side yard, and then our neighbor, who's their deck is just over the thing, he's like, where's all that heat coming from? You know, so we ended up putting it in the garage, leaving the door open, and just chaining off the garage door, roping off the garage door so nobody could get in. And we had to leave the door open for like a whole night. And it was still like 150 degrees in the garage the next morning. So, yeah.
It helps to give your neighbors like Christmas ornaments or something like that. Yeah. Like, don't mind us. It'll be a little loud. It'll be hot.
Well, the first time I lit up, I knew how it got its name. Roar.
Nice. So, any closing comments from you guys?
Everybody buy one.
Yeah, it completely changes craft shows for you.
Cool. So I'll just take a second. The rest of the agenda today. Thank you guys so much for being game for this. I know I didn't give you anything to go on, and I appreciate your trust and courage to get up here and sit in front of everybody and speak.